I want to tell you my story in the most honest way I can. Not the edited version, not the glamorous version, not the version that people imagine when they see the headlines. I want to tell you what it actually felt like to grow up with a dream that seemed too big for the place I came from, too impossible for a girl my age, too unrealistic for anyone to believe, except me. I didn't grow up surrounded by stages or studios. I grew up on a Christmas tree farm in Pennsylvania, where the world felt simple on the outside but incredibly alive on the inside. I remember walking between the rows of trees feeling like the wind itself was carrying secrets I needed to write down, emotions I didn't fully understand, stories that were waiting to be told. Before I knew how to sing them, before I knew how to play an instrument, I knew how to feel them. Writing became my first way of understanding the world. I didn't know that the little girl scribbling poems in her notebooks was planting seeds for something bigger. I didn't know that every silly line, every rhyme that didn't make sense, every journal entry would one day become the foundation of a life that would take me far beyond anything I could imagine. I was simply following something inside me. Something small, but persistent, a voice saying, "This is who you are." The guitar came into my life almost like an accident that wasn't really an accident. Someone showed me a few chords, and suddenly the world made sense in a different way. Music wasn't just something to listen to anymore, it became something I could build with my own hands. The strings hurt, the notes were messy, but I loved the feeling of creating something out of nothing. I loved the way emotions turned into sound. I loved that I didn't have to be perfect to begin, but dreams are funny. They call you before you're ready, and then they challenge you to grow into the person who can carry them. At 11 years old, I did something bold, something that makes more sense in retrospect than it did at the time. I went to Nashville with a demo CD. I walked into offices with so much hope, so much innocence, and so much belief that maybe someone would listen and see what I saw in myself. I remember sitting in waiting rooms, holding that CD like it was a piece of my soul, and then the rejections came one after another. Every label said no, they didn't soften it for me. They didn't pretend. They simply said I wasn't what they were looking for. I was 11, and the world told me you're not enough. That moment could have broken me. For a second, it felt like it did. But sometimes, being broken is exactly what shows you how strong you can become. I went home with tears in my backpack and fire in my chest. I didn't quit. I didn't let the world define what I was capable of. I decided that if every door was closed, then I'd learn how to knock louder. If the world didn't believe in me yet, I would give it reasons to. So I wrote, and wrote. And wrote. I studied songs like a scientist studies patterns. I practiced my guitar until the marks on my fingers became part of my identity. I rewrote verses until they finally expressed what my heart was screaming. I wasn't chasing fame, I was chasing growth. I wanted to become better than I was yesterday, and that obsession with improvement became my greatest companion. My parents watched me work with a kind of seriousness that didn't match my age. They saw something fierce in me, something I couldn't ignore. And that's when they made a decision that changed my life forever. We moved to Tennessee to be closer to Nashville. Not because success was guaranteed. Not because anyone had opened a door for me. But because they saw how badly I wanted this. Starting over in a new place at a young age was frightening. But fear becomes smaller when your purpose becomes bigger. Every afternoon, I wrote new songs. Every weekend, I practiced nonstop. Every moment that other kids spent doing ordinary things, I spent doing the only thing that made me feel alive, creating music. Eventually, opportunities came. But they came slowly, quietly, and only because I had already built the discipline long before anyone knew my name. People often think success happens magically, but the truth is much less glamorous. Success happens while no one is watching. It happens in the shadows, in the repetition, in the decision to keep going after rejection. As the world began to hear my music, I entered a reality I was not fully prepared for: fame mixed with judgment, praise mixed with criticism, applause mixed with misunderstanding. People who didn't know me felt entitled to define me. Critics questioned my talent. Strangers minimized my work. The spotlight became brighter, but with it came shadows I had to learn to navigate. But here's what I discovered: the world can take many things from you: privacy, certainty, innocence, but it can't take your voice unless you hand it over willingly. And I refused to silence myself. I evolved. I learned. I reinvented. Not to escape myself, but to grow into the strongest version of who I could be. Just like a songwriter changes chords to make the melody fit better, I adjusted my life to match who I was becoming. Growth isn't betrayal, it's survival. Reinvention isn't weakness, it's courage. Every heartbreak made me wiser, every setback made me stronger, every misunderstanding made me clearer about who I was, and every time I fell, I chose to rise again. If there is one thing I learned through all the chaos and beauty of my journey, it's this: dreams require resilience. Not once. Not twice. Every single day. They require the courage to begin when you feel unprepared, the strength to continue when no one believes in you, and the faith to rebuild when everything falls apart. My story is not special because it ended in success. My story matters because it started in failure, rejection, confusion, doubt, and still moved forward. And that is the heart of personal growth. That is the essence of building a life worth living. So if you're listening to me now, wondering if your dream is too big, too late, too unrealistic, I want you to hear this: the world's no is not the end, it's the beginning of your decision. Will you stop, or will you rise? I was just a girl on a Christmas tree farm with a notebook full of feelings. But I believed in that girl, and I never stopped. When my music finally reached the world, people assumed the hardest part was over. But the truth is, success didn't make me invincible, it just gave me new mountains to climb. With every achievement came new criticism, new expectations, new moments where I had to decide whether to shrink or to grow. There were times when people doubted my choices, questioned my intentions, or mocked my emotions. Times when it felt like every move I made was being watched, judged, or misunderstood. But every time the world tried to define me, I went back to the one thing that had always saved me: writing. Turning chaos into lyrics helped me remember who I was, and who I refused to stop becoming. Reinvention became part of my journey, not because I wanted to escape myself, but because I wanted to evolve. Changing my music, changing my style, changing my path, it was all part of becoming the version of me who could survive the storms that fame brought. Reinvention wasn't about being someone new, it was about being someone stronger. And then came one of the hardest chapters of my life: losing the rights to my own work. Songs I had poured my soul into were suddenly out of my control. But instead of letting that break me, I turned it into one of the greatest acts of resilience in my career. I re-recorded my music, reclaimed my voice, and reminded myself that nobody gets to own your story unless you hand it to them. If there is one message I want you to take from everything I've lived, it's this: strength isn't something you're born with. It's something you build. Every rejection, every heartbreak, every moment of doubt becomes a piece of the foundation you stand on. You don't grow by avoiding pain, you grow by transforming it. I started as a girl with a guitar and a dream no one believed in yet. And the only reason I'm here today is because I kept going when the world said no, and I kept believing when everything felt uncertain. So whatever your dream is, don't stop. Don't let fear silence you. Don't let rejection convince you that you're not meant for something bigger. Your voice matters. Your story matters. And the world needs what only you can create. The moment you choose yourself, everything changes. I did, and it made all the difference.